Hey, everybody. This is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 153rd Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We're glad to have you with us, even though we're in the midst of a horrible, horrible war, which is about to change global policy. I just actually read an astonishing piece about the Middle East situation, which I will try and post in the chat. This is more than just a regional war. This is a change in global power. And I'll leave you with this thought before we proceed, which is that the Chinese have decided that in the future they're going to do business with the Palestinians and not the Israelis. And that is about as powerful a statement as anyone can make in terms of the global power situation. But we will not be discussing that today. We have a ton of stuff in the first hour about the situation in Wisconsin, in Ohio, in Florida. We have someone who's been out in the streets in Florida collecting signatures, our own Wendy Lederman. We want to get a report on that. We have a case in Wisconsin that's probably going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we have a situation in Ohio that, once again, you could not make up. When Rachel Coyle joins us, we'll go into the deep dive on what happens in Ohio in the second hour. Well, we're also going to talk about Cop City, this horrendous situation in Atlanta where the progressive people of color who are running Atlanta are absolutely sabotaging democracy and participating in the murder, basically, of a young man who we need to discuss. So that's going to fill the first hour. We have a lot of other geopolitical stuff to deal with around the country. The second hour is going to be entirely devoted to the most important political fight in the country, to possibly the world, as far as I'm concerned, at least outside the Middle East. And that is the situation at Diablo Canyon, California, at the nuclear plant, and with the nuclear industry as a whole. Because we're seeing, amazingly, very powerful stuff from the New York Times and elsewhere about the tsunami of renewable energy, including in agrivoltaics, the use of solar panels on agricultural land to enhance agricultural productivity. You know, the idea in the public mind is if you put solar panels in farmland, you lose the farmland. Turns out that that's the opposite is true, and that there's very, very significant crop growing capability underneath solar panels all over the country and all over the world. So we'll be discussing that in the second hour, but our prime focus is going to be on the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant and the national campaign to shut these old reactors before they shut us. In the first place, we want to face our national political crisis, as we always do. That's in the first hour. I'd like to start, actually, I don't see Rachel Coyle yet from Ohio. So I'd like to start with Florida and Wendy Lederman. And, you know, we talk a lot about relational organizing. That's one of our primary focuses on the Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Zoom calls. And but we rarely have people on who are actually out doing it. And before I proceed, by the way, I want to welcome Lynn Sherry to our calls. I want to tell you about Lynn's books in a while. Lynn, it's great to have you with us. Lynn is a truly fabulous and very famous and very successful author of children's books. So I want to talk to Lynn as we proceed. But so Lynn, I hope you'll stay with us. It's great to see you. Wendy Lederman, you have been out on the streets in Florida. I don't know if you've been personally accosted yet by Ron DeSantis, but you have been gathering signatures for the proposed referendum on choice in Florida. And you've been telling me some pretty serious horror stories about what it's been like. So here's where the rubber meets the road, folks. Wendy has been out there getting yelled at and accosted and doing her best to gather signatures, which is at the core of what we believe in these calls. Wendy, what's it been like gathering signatures in Florida for a pro-choice constitutional amendment?
Thanks for asking. It's been interesting. It's been very interesting. Yeah, I haven't been personally accosted by Ron DeSantis yet. I have received a lot of backlash, a lot of really aggressive backlash. To where, I mean, almost if I can go a whole day without being called baby killer, it's been a phenomenal day. Yesterday, I think maybe the first or second person I approached was like, so you're trying to kill babies. Like, that's their immediate response, not understanding that there's really no exceptions right now. As it stands right now, Florida has a 15-week ban, but a 6-week ban was passed, and it's just being held up in appeals in a court case right now. And if the conservative court upholds it, then we go straight to a 6-week ban that has basically no exceptions. Like, if you're raped, you have to show documentation of it. I'm afraid something like the 10-year-old girl in Texas that was forced to carry, that we would be seeing situations like that. We have so many women in maternity wards right now.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? What exactly constitutes documentation of a rape?
Like police reports. I mean, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. It's very vague and really disturbing.
Does the rapist have to sign a waiver notice that he in fact committed a rape? Is that what's accepted in the courts?
It's a little too vague. You know, my brain isn't disturbed enough to even try to be able to comprehend what these people, like, whoever even thought of that is just a little bit beyond my bounds. I'm really not sure. It's just a very vague thing, like police reports, maybe hospital rape kits. I'm really not clear exactly what would be accepted and what wouldn't be, but just the fact that that's something that is a thing is really weird. And so there's a lot of women that you know, sometimes pregnancies, the fetus doesn't survive and it's killing the mother, or it's seriously hurting her, or it has maybe a 10% chance of actually surviving if it is carried to term. And doctors are too afraid of going to jail or losing their license. And so they let the women sit there and suffer. And I don't want to be too grotesque, but it's, they're just left to suffer and go through all the natural things that happen that are very painful and disturbing and traumatic, and can possibly die. And I don't know if people know the statistics, particularly towards Black women in the maternity wards right now, that just because of systemic racism don't get the care that they need.
Well, let me ask you this, since you're on the road here, and this is what we want to find out, what percentage of the people that you approach in Florida, what town are you in?
I'm in the Miami area. Sometimes I go up to Broward, but I'm generally in Miami, and I found certain pockets that are more receptive and progressive. But in the Miami area, I mean, I would say maybe 10 to 20% of the people I approach, which is really low on. And I've worked a lot of campaigns, a lot of different campaigns, whether it's medical marijuana, going up against the utility companies to demonopolize several times, Amendment 4 for the felons' rights. I've never had this kind of emotional, knee-jerk, ego-based reaction, dogma, religious-based reaction from people. I'm hoping that other areas of the state are not as reflective as this conservative area, because if Miami is any representation of the whole population, which I don't think that it is, but if it is, like, we need a 60% supermajority. I'm confident we'll get the measure on the ballot to amend the Constitution, which would obviously override the legislature. But if we do get it to the ballot, if the voters are anything like they are in Miami, I mean, I'm not confident about it. One thing, is there really an
ethnic breakdown in the kinds of response that you get? I mean, you're getting, no one's assaulted you yet, right? Thank God.
I mean, verbally, yes, every day. But I did have one guy a few months ago. I was in the Hollywood area, which is in Broward, which used to be pretty progressive and liberal. I had one guy come at me with a shopping cart, like beeline straight for me, and I stood there. I stood my ground, and when he got within about an inch of me, he swerved around me and then just got like right in my face, and we had like eyeballed each other, and it was like looking right at the devil himself. one thing I want to say is that what really disturbs me, there's two things that I'm finding, maybe three things that I'm finding really disturbing. One is that the voters don't care about the separation of church and state. They do not care about it. These evangelical, I just keep hearing, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. And I'm like, well, what if a child is raped? What if the woman's life is in danger and it's not viable? Well, it's God's will. It's God's will. It's God's child. And it's like, well, I don't think that's what Jesus would really want if you really get the full picture of what's happening. And so the separation of church and state is one of our fundamental things to democracy. And it's just, I think people are aware and they're just more concerned about putting their will on others and calling it God's will. Another thing that bothers me a lot is that in particularly with black people, you know, I always say if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't try so hard to take it from you. But I keep hearing like, I'm free, I don't participate in the system. And to me, that it's a backwards like logic that goes against self-interest. And I really wish people understood more that, you know, again, if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't try so hard to take it from you. And so I hope that there's more outreach within that community to see that, you know, it's issues on the ballot, not always just people. And, you know, that's how fascism happens, is when we refuse to participate. That's the opposite. I can't culturally speak to that, but in my personal opinion. And then another thing that I've brought up before is that, you know, I would try to go into to Black areas to kind of make bridges with people and to do just outreach and connect the community. And I was getting a lot of really low validity, where I turn in the petitions that people sign that they think that they're registered to vote and they're not registered. And what's happening is that when people move, if they don't change their address on their driver's license, then they get purged from the voter rolls, and they're not aware that that's happening. And we're in an eviction epidemic. So those are 3 points.
Have you had people tell you that they won't sign because they're afraid of repercussions if they sign?
I have, and that's something that you'll get in any campaign. And when we talk about Cop City, that's a point I want to bring up. I think what I'm seeing most of is that people just don't want to put their personal information down because they're afraid of having like identity theft and getting phone calls, robocalls, and having their information get out, or that, you know, they just don't want to give their personal, because they have to get their voter address and their birthday if they don't have their voter number, which most people don't. So people can be hesitant about that. It's a small, I'd say maybe about 20-25% usually older population, which is understandable, but we need to participate in democracy. You know, it's the only way that we can do this. So I always appreciate when
Well, we are concerned about you, your tender self going out in the streets like this, but you know, it's amazing and it's very powerful to hear this. Ruth Strauss, did you want to ask Wendy a question? Ruth?
Yeah, actually, I didn't want to ask you a question, but I wanted to tell you a corollary to that, and your neighbor at Alabama next door. Tom Hartman did a horrendous story today about a woman who got arrested in her 2nd month of pregnancy for methamphetamine. They jailed her. They made her go through labor in her cell. She was screaming. They told her to stop screaming. Finally, she broke her water. She gave birth standing up in the shower because they would not take her to the hospital. She bled profusely, almost died. She had abruptio placenta, which is a, an obstetric emergency. And then after she delivered, they brought her back to the jail and wouldn't give the baby back. I mean, and there was another case, similar case like that. So it's really, it's really bad, and God bless you for doing the work.
Well, thank you for that, Ruth. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. Yeah, Ruth's bringing up a point because and I'm sorry, it's really hard this week to like take in all. I think we're all collectively feeling just kind of the despair we feel just by. And I feel like anytime I put on like the news or anything, it's like I feel like there should be a banner that says "Abandon all hope, all ye who enter in." I'm hearing a lot of personal stories of people that had to have abortions, whether it was, or doctors that were doctors at the time when, before Roe versus Wade, and what they would see, what the women would go through before they could have safe access, and just the traumatic stories, women who accidentally got pregnant when they were my age and in their 40s, and we're told that it's their life or the child, and the child's probably not going to make it, or if it does, it's going to have some really messed up disease. And it's just, people ask me, like, so I'll approach people and tell them, this is just to put it on the ballot to let the voters decide, especially in cases of emergency up to viability, or cases of involuntary pregnancy, or in case like rape. And they just say, so you're pro-abortion? And I tell them, nobody's pro-abortion. Nobody's pro-abortion. It's one of the most traumatic decisions a woman could possibly make. Like, I've personally, I've never done it. I probably would never have one, but it's not up to me to tell anybody else what to do for themselves. And it's like, I talked to women that had an abortion like 40 years ago, and you could see in their eyes that they're still haunted by it. I stopped calling them pro-lifers, because they're pro-birthers. They don't give a damn about the kid once they're born. They don't give a damn about these women that are bleeding out to death. They don't care. And they're going to arrest doctors just for trying to save a woman's life. It is so horrifying to think about the reality of what this really means, and the fact, and the people who are making these laws, their girlfriends, not their wives, but their girlfriends, they need something, they're going to go where they need to go and get what they need to get. They don't give a damn. It's just about control. It's all about controlling the population. It's
especially controlling the women, obviously. I assume you have people who come up to you and thank you for what you're doing.
I do. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I do. Even people that don't sign, I do. And it's like, for 10, 20 people that are negative towards me, I get one person that truly is grateful, of all ages, men, women. I'm getting more support from men, especially recently for some reason. The other day I went out and I had like 2 or 3 women sign, and the rest were men. But I get a lot of people that thank me and understand what it takes to be out there doing it. But I love petitioning. I really do, because you get to educate people about the democratic process. If a mom or a dad stops and they have a kid that's old enough to understand, I'll just explain to them what a citizen's initiative is, and get them excited about being able to vote when they're able to, and participate in democracy, and they light up, and it's really inspiring. And like, I wish that petition campaigns went all year, every year, like, no matter the negativity. Like, I love being a part of the process. I love people coming together, people stopping, they're going about their day, they're trying to get home, feed their families, and they still take a minute to stop and give me, a stranger, their personal information, just because they understand how important it is to be able to have a voice in the system and participate. And I just absolutely love it, regardless.
Well, one thing that always bugs me also, and I hope people appreciate this deep dive here, but it's astounding to me that people can call themselves pro-life and demand that we not have abortions, and at the same time support the death penalty, which we know kills at least 10% of the people who are put to death are innocent. It's a statistical reality. There's no doubt about it. So, George W. Bush was governor of Texas and presided over 152 executions. So we are reasonably sure that 15 of those people were innocent, and he just killed 15 people. And then they also oppose gun control, which is, it's astounding, the hypocrisy.
Yeah, and they just they're trying to roll back child labor laws right now to compensate for all the migrant workers that they're losing because of their racist policies. They just lowered the threshold for imposing the death penalty, where you don't even need a juror majority vote, which is really terrifying. And growing up, my mom worked in foster care. She was just a secretary, but sometimes I would go with her to the office, or whatever we call it, the office. But I would interact all the time with the kids that are in foster care. And out of all the people that want to call me a baby killer or whatever they want to call me, how many of them have adopted? I've met one person that actually adopted, that she was against abortion and she did adopt. One person out of all the thousands of people I've spoken to in the last few months. And it's just not something, it's like there's this cognitive dissonance where they don't want to accept the reality. Like it's a huge religious dogma. And I just really try as best as I can to get people to understand the nuances and all the factors to communicate with their communities. And they refuse to even believe, like they're like, I guess, lied to about what the law actually is and what the actual reality is. And they actually think that I'm out here trying to kill babies. Like I'm out here on a Saturday night in front of a like supermarket or whatever it is, like trying to get signatures in the humidity, like because I want to kill babies. Like that really makes a whole lot of sense. And I'm waving to your child saying, hi, what a cutie. It's like, people just are stuck in their beliefs for whatever inner trauma that they don't want to come out of to face reality beyond what they're comfortable in. And it's frightening because again, we have a separation of church and state. You know, I'm just trying to put something on the ballot to let the voters decide, and we would need a 60% supermajority, and they're like, no, I'm a Christian. That's like, okay. All right. I don't.
All right. Justin, did you want to say something? And then we're going to move on. Wendy, you are truly astounding. We have 54 people on the call. We're going to go to Rachel Coyle in a minute and visit Ohio, but go ahead, Justin. Justin LeBlanc, you need to unmute. There. Okay.
So one of the things to bring into all of this is that, you know, people will default to what they're familiar with, right? So their traditions of things. And so when we talk about, say, Christian Orthodox, most people don't know that the #1 abortion state in the statistics is actually a Christian Orthodox nation. It's Russia. Russia. And of course, that's the same nation that is being defended all over the media by the right wing, is that supposedly that they've got the value system that aligns with the evangelical portion of America, and so we need to really support Russia in everything that they do.
Well, in Russia, they hate gays, so right. So I guess that compensates. It's okay to have abortions if you hate gay people. Is that the way it goes in Russia?
I wouldn't be surprised if the statistics actually support that there are quite a gay culture in Russia, just hidden.
Oh, it's a nightmare over there. And
anyway,
those of you who are interested, Peter Tchaikovsky, who I consider the greatest Russian composer, was gay, and they basically put him to death for being gay in Russia in the 1880s, a long time ago. But there you go. Okay, Justin.
Another part of the messaging here is that we need to get back to an idea of a rising tide raises all boats, right? Not everything that Planned Parenthood does is abortion. In fact, it's only 3% of what they do. So what about the other 97%? Is any of that of benefit to your community?
Right.
We need to really have more nuanced discussions.
Right. And as has been pointed out in the chat here, you know, we need a better healthcare system and better care. And I got to tell you, you know, this wonderful liberal governor we have here in California, talking about abortion, it's amazing. It's also amazing to me that people who consider themselves pro-life and want to ban abortion also want to ban birth control. I mean, what are you thinking about? And the governor of California has just vetoed a bill that would have given free condoms to all high school kids. And he vetoes the bill. So, you know, it's hard for me to say. We got 55 people on the call. Wendy, we're going to come back to you in a minute or two for Cop City, but we have Rachel Coyle. I want to talk to you about Ohio. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. Just one quick point. I do want to thank Justin for bringing that up, because I do try to communicate that it's a healthcare issue. And I want to say that, and also, and in schools, they're not even teaching education in schools. So like kids don't even know of, like, you know, about, like, you're not allowed to mention menstruation. Like you can't say the word menstruation in middle school now in Florida. But I do get, I would say maybe about 20% of people that start off really staunchly pro-life. It happened just the other night. I was at a store and some guy was like, well, what if the guy wants to have the baby and then the woman wants to abort it? And I'm like, well, what if she was raped? And I start communicating with them in a way that's not aggressive. And I would say about at least 20% of the people that start off like almost mad at me for trying end up signing, because they're not absolutists like the rest of the people. So, you know, I won't abandon all hope. Even if the signs say that, I refuse to. Just got to keep communicating and stay positive and just focus on visualizing a positive outcome on all this.
Well, Wendy, we're all in awe of you, and we're thrilled to have you as one of our co-conveners. And thank you for your great work. And we'll come back to you in a few minutes on about Cop City. But That's an astonishing present. I can't imagine you standing out there at the 7-Elevens in the middle of Florida. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Okay, thank you, Wendy. Stay with us, please. We got Rachel Coyle wearing her Ohio State sweatshirt. You know, I lived in Columbus for many years, and I went to Michigan. I would never wear my Michigan stuff in Columbus over the weekend of the big game. So you're safe right now. Can you give us the latest mich-a-gass from Ohio? It's astounding. I do want to recognize Joel Siegel's with us. John Steiner, the great Ray McClendon, is with us. Anna Georgie from Western Mass. Anna, I hope you'll be with us in the second hour. We're going to talk about shutting nuclear plants, including Montague. Go ahead, Rachel. Let's talk about Ohio. What's the latest?
There's a lot happening in Ohio. I didn't even notice I was wearing my OSU shirt. Most of what I own has Ohio State stuff on it. So
we can still be friends.
That's good. That's good. So Ohio has a huge election coming up in less than 4 weeks, exactly 4 weeks. So it's November 7th. We are voting on abortion rights, marijuana, adult use marijuana, and we have a significant number of extremists running for school board elections, which I know is happening all over the country. So if you have school board elections this year, remember to vote in those elections. So we've got just an unbelievable chance to really improve the state of things in Ohio in just a few weeks. But if it goes the wrong way, it could be a long time until we get abortion rights and adult use marijuana on the ballot again. So if you know anyone in Ohio, make sure they know to vote. We also have, it's very confusing for folks because we had that illegal election just a few weeks ago in August, where the entire campaign was trying to get everyone to vote no to defend democracy. And now the exact same issue one again in November is abortion rights, and we need everyone to vote yes. So it's very confusing for folks. And we know that they did that on purpose. So there's a lot of people who, you know, think that they're pro-choice, think that they're trying to vote for abortion, but they think they're supposed to vote no on issue one. And so we have to get the word out, not only that there is an election, but that you have to vote differently than you did just a few weeks ago. So it's been chaos, but people are supportive in the polls of these issues. So we just need to make sure people have the information necessary to vote.
Now, when you say we, what kind of organization do you have going in Ohio? Is there a strong grassroots, you know, the kind of that Ray McClendon would want to build? And are you in touch with Ray, who's on the call here, you know, does that kind of organizing?
It's a very good organization. They've got several different coalitions working together. So one is the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights. It's literally a large group of doctors who were worried about their patients who started a group, and they're working alongside all the reproductive rights groups that are active in the state, like Pro-Choice Ohio and Planned Parenthood and the Abortion Fund and all of these different groups working together. And then they've got support from several of the unions as well. So they've got a good ground game. They're knocking on doors, letting people know that in November, we're supposed to vote yes, which is a different message than just a few weeks ago. So I do think the coalition is very good, very strong. They've got enough money to be on TV with ads, so that's key. But I'll put some links in the chat too for anyone who wants to help spread the word. And I'm happy to connect with anyone who's interested.
Well, Ray McClendon, are you on with us here still, Ray? Ray, can you identify if you're with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Have you, and meet Rachel.
Hello.
Have you been involved in any kind of relational organizing in Ohio? And have you been in
No,
touch?
not to this point, we have not.
Rachel, you should be in touch with Ray, because the kind of, you know, I hear that you're buying TV ads, and that is what it is. But in the month that's remaining, maybe there could be some steps taken forward on grassroots organizing, because Ray's the master, and you know, they pulled it off in Georgia, and in a case like Ohio, you know, we do have 7 BIPOC places, which is Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Youngstown, Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati. And they all have, I don't have to tell you, they're very substantial BIPOC communities where this kind of organizing could be greatly useful. So if you two could please connect, and Ray, maybe you could take a look at what they're doing and see if your great knowledge could be of use. Maybe it'll make a difference.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll
Great.
put my email in the chat and I'd love to.
Okay, great. We'll reach
Yes,
out.
please do. And because, you know, and we're going to have to warm up in Ohio because in 24, you know, it's all going to happen and they're going to go after. We are nonpartisan, but I personally love Sherrod Brown, and it's going to be a miracle to get him back in the Senate. And that kind of organizing will make the difference. I mean, John Steiner's on the call. We did talk to the last Democratic Senate candidate and suggested that maybe they'd try grassroots organizing, and we never heard from him again. So in this case, with Sherrod, who's a personal friend, you know, this has to happen. So maybe we can make a breakthrough here that would make a big difference. I appreciate that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So what's with gerrymandering now in Ohio? Is that on the ballot again?
We are hoping it will be on the ballot next November, 2024. So folks are now at the point where they're able to gather signatures. They got past the ballot board, they got past the attorney general approving their language, and now they need to collect what is hundreds of thousands of signatures like we did with abortion rights to try and get an anti-gerrymandering amendment on Ohio's ballot next year. That's the Citizens Not Politicians campaign. And they are, it's a really, from what I've read so far, I'll need to dive into it more after the election, but I really like the way the strategy they're using, which is they would create a citizen commission that is this equal number of Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and it would ban all current and previous politicians from the process entirely, which I'm a big fan of.
Well, you need to look at the districting commission in California. In California, in 2008 and 2010, there were referenda. One was for the state legislature, and then the other was for the congressional delegation. And Arnold Schwarzenegger donated $3 million to these campaigns. Now, he was a Republican, and the gerrymandering in California was dominated by the Democrats. And Nancy Pelosi opposed this commission. But it's been in place for more than 10 years now. But it's actually very well liked, very successful. I can't give you the detail, but you should look at it because this is as best I can tell until recently, the most successful districting commission in any state. So please take a look at what's going on in California.
Yeah,
We got a couple of hands. Steve Caruso, you're in Ohio. Go ahead.
Yeah, the
We're
person
getting
running
noise from
against
somebody.
Sherrod Brown is Secretary of State. That's David. Sorry, David. He was next. But David, you're driving. Maybe you should pull over. Give it him.
Yeah,
Hold on a
David,
second. We'll get to you.
we don't want to
So,
talk to you if you're driving. We
they-
can't do that.
He was just recently this guy that's running against Sherrod Brown on Steve Bannon's show, All Out Trump. Okay, and he's also got his thumb on the scale all the way around the elections. Whatever he
You're
can
talking
do.
about you're talking about the Secretary of State of Ohio. Frank
Secretary
Moreau.
of State, who's an ex-Green Beret, by the way, mind you. Okay, so then in what was it, Bell Fountain? They had an issue on the ballot up there, and he let it slide through, even though they had changed the wording in front of the ballot, and they kept all the signatures. And the Supreme Court, which is run by Republicans, said no. Sorry, buddy, you can't let that happen. So, we're keeping an eye on this guy, and he's kind of dangerous, kind of out there. And if you're hanging out with Steve Bannon, all bets are off as far as I'm concerned. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, so in Ohio, as I've said before, we used to have the problem with the marijuana activists that they would get too stoned and they wouldn't get enough signatures. So I guess you've overcome that this time. And what is the nature of the marijuana statute? Is it total legality or what is it?
It is, yes. It would allow for small amounts of home grow as well, which is nice. And it could create a system similar to what they have in Michigan, where you could sell and buy it legally. So it would for adults over the age of 21, obviously. So it's very well written, and it's available. Let me see if I can put the link in the chat.
Well, let me suggest while you're doing that, that I would suggest that 1 week prior to the election, or I guess you probably have early voting, that let's say a month before the election, you ask for a statewide ban on marijuana smoking so that the people who are going to vote will remember to go to the polls. Can you do that?
I'll see what I can do.
Okay. So so it's a total legalization in Ohio. It's not just medical.
Correct. Ohio currently has medical. So this would legalize recreational for adults over the age of 21.
Okay. All right. And what's the abortion statute say?
It would essentially restore what we had under Roe versus Wade. So abortion would be legal up to the point of, you could ban it after the point of viability, except with life and health of the mother, obviously, exemptions in there. And it would basically restore Roe. And it's exactly 1 page long. It's easy to read. I'll share it. We literally have a website called readtheamendment.com. Our entire goal is to get everyone in Ohio to read it and see that it's that simple. And it's not extreme. It doesn't include anything else. They're trying to pretend it involves trans youth somehow, or parents' rights, or things that are not at all written in the amendment. Literally all it would do is restore abortion rights up to viability.
Okay. Well, good luck with it, and definitely connect with Ray. Having lived in Ohio all these years, there has to be a bottom-up change in how progressives do campaigning in Ohio. It has to happen. The progressives in Ohio were so hamstrung by outmoded ways of thinking about organizing. You need Ray McClendon and you need Andrea Miller. And so please make that connection. Okay. It would be wonderful.
Happy to
Good luck with the referenda. And Ohio has already passed 2 anti-gerrymandering referenda, and it's still a nightmare. So hopefully let's think that this will take root. I do want to jump over. I don't know if we have anybody on from Wisconsin. Oh, Rick, did you pull over?
David Gurin. Go ahead, David.
David Gurin, are you stopped?
I'm stopping right now.
Please. The last thing we want is to see a car wreck on our Zoom.
stopped.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to add on the abortion reproductive rights amendment, it also guarantees that contraceptives would be available,
Yes.
which I guess some far right groups want to get rid of contraceptives. And groups that are working on it, I belong to an indivisible group. We are canvassing door to door. Also, the Democratic Party is supporting issue 1, and Democratic Socialists of America, at least in Akron, our group is doing canvassing. So there is various groups out there besides one that Rachel had mentioned. And thank you, Rachel, for everything you do. Appreciate it. And
you're in Ohio, Rick?
Dave, it's Dave.
Dave, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I live in Akron, Ohio, actually.
All right. So these 2 major amendments will tell a big story in Ohio.
Yes.
Is there anything else on the ballot?
Yeah, it's on the ballot for this November.
All right.
And
Well,
then, so I also want to mention, in terms of the independent commission, a lot of it was based on the Michigan model, actually. They did look at California also. The 2 groups that were involved with that is Common Cause Ohio and the League of Women Voters Ohio. They worked together and they looked at the other models out there, and I believe a lot of it is based on Michigan, but they tried to get the best, what would work best, and also what would work best in Ohio. So
all right, very good. I'm going to emphasize to you again, along with Rachel, you need to be in touch with Ray McClendon and Andrea Miller. and really the relational grassroots campaigning model that changed Florida and US Senate has got to go into Ohio. There's no reason to continue losing these elections in Ohio. It's
Right.
still, you know, I grew up in Ohio when it was a Democratic state. It's still a mind boggle to me that it's not, but that's because of the way the campaigning is going. So you got to change it.
And gerrymandering. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the gerrymandering is part of the package. So,
Right.
you know, that's the way it's at. So you and Rachel, please contact Ray McClendon. He'll get you with Andrea Miller, and maybe we can change Ohio going forward. Something's got to happen.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank
And
you.
you can drive again, Ray. I mean, David,
Dave.
we need to see your license, but I won't let that go. Okay, go ahead. All right. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody. We have
All right.
58 people on the call. I do want to bring up what's going on in Wisconsin. I don't know if we have anybody from Wisconsin on the call at this point, but it's quite mind-boggling, as I think most of you are aware, and we did have a report before. We followed through the process, the election of a liberal Supreme Court justice to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which tipped the balance to 4-3, and that Supreme Court is on the brink now of changing the gerrymandering laws in Wisconsin. And the Republican response was to try to talk about impeaching the newly elected Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin, Janet Przewiecz. If I'm close, that's it. And they have just now, this week, backed off. And apparently they're not going to do it. So what they're saying now, the Republicans in Wisconsin, they want her to recuse herself from the decision on gerrymandering because she made a comment, a public comment. So Przewiecz is what somebody got in there. So
Protasiewicz.
There you go. So what the Republicans now are saying, they're not going to impeach her, but they are going to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they're expecting, you know, the right wing to throw her out. But I'm going to tell you something right now. The last thing that U.S. Supreme Court justices are going to do is going to allow the impeachment of a Supreme Court justice at the state level. That's not going to happen. And so I think what is going to happen is that in Wisconsin, she will stay on the court. The court will overturn the gerrymandered maps in Wisconsin. And in 2024, God willing, and I'll get Norm Stockwell back on next week, that there will be a change in Wisconsin, like what happened in Michigan. That's a prediction. But the Republicans did come forward basically and said they're not going to impeach her. It could change, but currently that's the common belief. Okay. Does anybody else want to jump in on this before we go back to Florida? I did want to take an opportunity. Lynn Cherry, are you still on the call? Lynn Cherry? Do we see Lynn Cherry here? Can you raise your hand? I guess she's not on. Tatanka Bricka, good to see you. Glad to have you on. And Tatanka.
Lynn is here.
What's that?
Lynn is here.
Okay, congratulations, Tatanka, on your election to the KPFK board. I think actually you will enjoy it. You working with me and Myla, who's on the call, and some other really great people. Lynn Cherry, can we highlight you real quick? I just want to, is that Lynn?
She's here, but your video is not.
Okay, so I just want to mention the name Lynn Cherry. Lynn Cherry is a multi-million-dollar bookseller. She wrote a book called The Kapok Tree, which is one of the great environmental, it's really one of the top 5 environmental books ever written. It's right up there with the Lorax and others. And she is absolutely terrific. I wish we could see you, Lynn. Lynn, you're going to have to come back when when we can show, Steve, if you can dig up a copy of an image of the great Kapok tree, that would be really great. But anyway, Lynn, I guess we'll see you another time. It's really great to have you with us. Thank you. Okay, in the second hour, we're going to go into nuclear power. We're 15 minutes away from that. We want to talk about Diablo Canyon in particular, and we want to have a very specific discussions on the strategies for shutting nuclear power, which after all is just an adjunct of the nuclear weapons industry. Rick LaMonica, did you want to speak? And then Sandy Bolzenius. Rick LaMonica, go ahead. I gotta unmute you.
Oh, okay, you do it.
There you go. You're
I
good.
wanted to tell Rachel that also there's an AFSC office that used to be in Akron, and I think the guy that ran it moved it to Cleveland where he lived, and I'm forgetting his name.
Greg Coleridge.
Yeah, Greg Coleridge. Thank you. And there is also a small Alliance for Democracy membership in Ohio, and they should be able to help you with all this petition signature getting to get that stuff on the ballot. And you know, WILF and some of these other groups. So I don't know if you can get contact with Common Cause and get them to help you. But the Alliance is a small group and we should be able to help.
All right, so Rachel, if you're still with us, if you can, or Steve, put her contacts in the chat, and we will make sure that connection is made. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Sandy Bolzenius, Sandy, you with us here? Oh,
Okay.
Rachel, you got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm here.
good.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead, Sandy.
yeah, first of all, Harvey, you say my name so well, better than I do, my last name, and it's not
Oh,
easy.
cool.
Um,
It's my new teeth. They help me, you know.
okay, there it is. But anyway, I don't know if this is really pertinent to the conversation, but I thought it might be. We've got a couple, our central, Columbus is, they say it's Democrat led, but really it's light Republican light. So I just want to throw out that we've got two people. Joe Motil is running for mayor. He's contesting the mayor, and who just keeps giving tax abatement after tax abatement and issues with the police. And then we have Adrienne Hood, whose son was killed several years ago by the police, and she's running for city council. She'll be terrific. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because it's so cool to see local people, just regular people on the ground stepping up to the plate, and all the people who are trying to, help them out. And I mean, I just love the bottom up, because that's the only way it's going to work. So,
Absolutely.
I throw that
Thank
in.
you for that, Sandy. And make sure you're in touch with Rachel and join.
I just wrote her now. So Rachel, I got
Okay,
you.
so
Thanks.
Sandy's also in Columbus, Rachel, and God help us, we got to win Ohio back. There was a time when no president, no Republican president had ever been elected, ever, starting with Lincoln, without carrying Ohio. Franklin Roosevelt was elected, I think, in 36, or one time Franklin Roosevelt ran for president and did not carry Ohio and won. But no Republican ever won without Ohio. So,
But the problem in Ohio and all around the country is once they find that you're a stronghold, they just suppress, oppress, arrest, whatever they need to do to make sure that the real voices are not able to rise to the top. So that's what we're fighting against. Anyway, thanks.
yes, well, we know now, forewarned is forearmed. So we got to deal with it. So please be in touch with Rachel and with coaching from Ray and Andrea. Maybe we can turn that around. Okay.
Thanks.
Did anybody else I want to go back to Wendy. If anybody else is not, I see no other hands. Wendy, I want you to please, if you can, talk about Cop City and what's happening in this horrendous situation. Please, we have 11 minutes till the top of the hour and we go nuclear. So if anybody else wants to say anything before the top of the hour, please do. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. Yes, Cop City. I think I should just start by saying what is happening there should send grand bells of alarm and terror for the democratic process. What is unfolding continually since the murder of Tortuguita in January and probably before that. But I just want to really emphasize how terrifying the implications of this story are. So Tortuguita, Manuel Tiran Perez was shot 57 times, and I'll call this segment 57 bullet holes speak for themselves. He was shot 57 times by police. Independent autopsies showed that he was sitting cross-legged inside a tent in a meditative position with his hands up. No gunpowder residue was found on his hands. Yet the 6 officers who shot him will not be facing charges, and there'll be no further investigation by the state of Georgia or the city of Atlanta. There are 61 RICO charges right now for racketeering, conspiracy. This is what's used against gangsters, right? And people like Trump, against protesters, just for dissent. I mean, even people that were collecting bail funds for other protesters who were arrested at like a music festival that wasn't even happening near the site of where this police facility is being built, that hasn't even been approved, but they're tearing down sacred forests already to build this $90 billion police facility where the police will be trained by Israeli forces to suppress urban uprising and dissent. It's modeled after a city. There were people that were passing out flyers with the names of the cops that shot Tortuguita. They're now facing RICO charges. 61 people sitting in Fulton County Jail. All right, we need a Fulton Prison Blues song, because this is where LaShawn Thompson was eaten by bed bugs awaiting trial before he was even charged, eaten to death by bed bugs in this overcrowded prison that is overcrowded by multiples. It's horrendous, the conditions in this prison. It's notorious. And these are people that were passing out flyers, that were attending a music festival, that were collecting bail funds. And these RICO charges stem back to the date that George Floyd was murdered, long before Cop City was even proposed. So the Georgia State Attorney, Chris Carr, is the person who brought these charges. I'm calling him a Cox Brothers bro. Like and the people so the Atlanta Police Foundation is part of who's funding it. Like the city is supposed to match funds up to create this $90 million facility. And
well, tell us now about the attempt to get the ballot on, because we're going to run out of time. So tell us what's happened to the democratic process in terms of gathering signatures and getting a ballot initiative to cancel the project.
Got it. Thank you. So they needed a petition of 100,000 signatures from Atlanta residents just to get a referendum to put Cop City to vote. They collected in 2 or 3 months, they collected 116,000 signatures. And the city was like, they publicly were like, okay, we'll put it to referendum, but then behind the scenes we're taking it to court. And the judge was like, basically like, yo, no, like this is what you're doing is horrendous. Like this needs to, for the people, you know, democracy needs to prevail here, and you need to be honest. So now they're appealing it, and they're, you know, challenging signature verification, and they're just tying it up in court. Meanwhile, like they don't even need the court. They could just put it on the ballot like the democratic process says. Now, beyond waiting for those verifications and that appeal, they've hired some lawyers. So I'll put some phone numbers in the chat after I speak people that call. And so
Yeah, I may have to.
I'm getting background noise.
Okay, I think I have to.
Ruth, could you please
Ruth?
mute yourself? Thank you. So there's lawyers, they're actually trying to reverse the entire referendum process right now to like take away the law that allows petition gathering to create a referendum. They just want to do away with that completely. And in the abortion segment earlier, I think Justin brought up about, can these signatures be made public? And I think you had asked as well. So in my experience, I've been petitioning during various campaigns since 2015. I have never, like when people sign, I guarantee them, look, it just goes straight to the election office. Your information will not be shared with anybody. That's something I say with confidence. The city of Atlanta, the city clerk, publicly posted the personal information of the 116,000 people that signed these petitions. All right, this undermines privacy of the vote. I mean, like, okay, granted, it's illegal to do that. I don't know the specific legality I just know that the custom, it's when you sign a petition, it goes to the election office. There's no reason.
Are you
It's
saying
just-
that they published the names and addresses of the
Yeah,
people who
the public-
signed?
Yeah, so people that might, like, this could jeopardize their jobs, this, like, for whatever reason, like, this stop, like, that's a huge thing within the voting community. When we talk to John Brakey and Ray Lutz about the whole process of transparency and having, like, ballot scans so we can be able to verify the vote. Well, it's really important to have voter privacy, because sometimes people vote against what their community pressure is, you know, like maybe they're, again, their jobs, their family, whatever it is, they're just their personal views they don't want on display. And that's like an American right, you know, to be able to have a private vote. And they publicly, I mean, that puts them in danger. Like there's some, like, even with Donziger deal, yeah, the whole reason is that he is being persecuted by the courts is because he refused to turn over his client information. Like, having this information out there is just extremely dangerous for the people who sign. And so I'll
Okay.
put some and numbers for people to call, Senator Warnock, Senator Ossoff, these lawyers telling them to not take this case, and the Atlanta Police Foundation, which is all funded by corporations. It's just disgusting that all Democratic City Council of Atlanta, the Georgia Democrats, they're all behind this. And the police will be trained by Israeli forces to suppress dissent. And I really quickly just want to mention what's happening and tied in with these names being released in Canada. It seems unrelated, but it is. In Canada, they just passed the other day that banks can hold on and lock your funds, your banking funds, without a court order. If you're posting something online that they don't like, with the trucker convoy, however you feel about them, they were people who donated to the truckers can have their funds frozen, corporate or personal, and that's a new law in Canada now. Imagine if that happened here, that you donate to the Cop City protesters and now your entire bank account is frozen and you can't feed your children or pay your utility bill. It's a scary, scary, scary stuff. Thank you for hearing me out.
Boy, that's brutal. Thank you so much, Wendy. Hope we haven't worn you out today. Ruth Strauss, go ahead.
Yeah, just two quick things. One is, Wendy, that business of doxing signers of petitions, I think you ought to see if you can get the ACLU involved or some legal organization, because I'm sure that that's, you know, some kind of privacy, obviously, thing. The other thing I wanted to say is for everybody to have a heads up about this business of these, you know, police, you know, facilities, because I read recently, and I'm sure you know, that there are other states that are using Atlanta as a model. So people be aware, know what's going on in your state, and get out ahead of it if you hear anything. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ruth. There's one in California. I know Ray Lutz a while back had tried to stop a facility like this, because again, it's literally the whole place is modeled after a city to suppress dissent. And you're right. I believe, I'm sure, I know the ACLU is involved, and I'm sure, because this is Georgia, I'm in Florida. But my thing as well is that I feel like there should be a recall petition for the commissioners, like just get them out of office, vote them all out. I think that should be the next petition, in my opinion, as a legal strategy. I'm hoping that they're working on all avenues.
Okay, again, Wendy, thank you so much. Very, very disturbing. We're at 2:59 California time. We were about to head into nuclear power. I did want to mention my buddy Dave Saltman is on the line. David, are you with us? Dave Saltman and I talk a lot about the Middle East, and I've avoided talking about it today, but Dave sent me an article that I found truly astounding, and if we can put it in the chat, Dave, there you are. If you can put that article that you sent me, Dave, the link in the chat, that would be really interesting, I think, for people. Maybe next week we'll stick our toe in and talk about the Middle East. But
Harley, I sent you three. Which one are you talking about?
Send me, well, if you can put all three in the chat, that would be great.
Okay, I'm not sure how to do that.
Just send the link. Do you have Steve Caruso's email?
No.
All right. Well, send it to me and I'll forward it to him, and we'll put it in the chat.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dave.
Okay, sure.
All right, at the end of this hour, we're now going to transition to nuclear power and to Diablo Canyon. Thank you again, Wendy. Thank you, Lynn Cherry, if you can ever get your video right. Steve, you did have Lynn Cherry's book. Can we show Lynn Cherry's book again real quick? That would be great. Lynn is blanked on the screen there. This is one of the great environmental books of all time. It's The Great Kapok Tree by Lynn Cherry. Thank you, Steve, for not showing us Amazon. I highly recommend, especially for kids, that you get this book. If Lynn is visible another time, we'll talk to her. But this is right up there with the Lorax and any other environmental kids book you'll ever see. Okay, thank you so much. All right, we're going to segue now into an hour-long discussion on nuclear power on Diablo Canyon, and we need to strategize exactly how we can win. No one needs to tell us. We have more than 50 people on the call. We are being live streamed. This will be rebroadcast at PRN Thursday night. We are in the throes now, as many of you know, and there's Kevin Camps, of a massive, we're also joined by Robert Freeling, one of the great experts on renewable energy, especially in California. We are in the throes of two major attacks by the federal government and certainly the state governments of California and Michigan to, in Michigan's case, revive a nuclear plant that's already been shut, and in California to continue operations at the Diablo Canyon reactors, which were an agreement was signed, a legally binding agreement, we thought, in 2016 to shut the two reactors at Diablo Canyon. And we're trying to figure out how to win. I mean, I was greatly inspired. My first demonstration in 1962, we picketed a roller rink. I was a junior in high school. I was captain of the tennis team, and highly competitive. And we picketed it and we won. That's why I became an activist, because in my world it's just another sport. But here we are 60 years later. So now we're not like talking about how to shut Diablo Canyon we are talking about it for our health, but it's not an academic exercise. We want to win. Now, Anna Georgie's on the call from Western Massachusetts. And in 1973, we were living on a communal farm, organic farm in the town of Montague, and the utility came in and said they were going to build 2 nuclear plants 4 miles from our house. And that's how the term no nukes got coined. And we stopped them. We beat them. They never came in. They never got their bulldozers in. So now we got these 2 reactors that everybody knows is awful in California and the Palisades of Michigan. We've got Kevin Camps on the line. Kevin, you've been in this movement for a long time. Can you tell us, Kevin, how we're going to shut Palisades and what's been the key to our success at shutting other reactors? Let me name some: Montague, Yankee Row, Vermont Yankee, Maine Yankee, Indian Point now, and of course San Onofre. And we've just got a great new film on San Onofre syndrome. We have the actual filmmakers on with us, Jim and Mary Beth, and people from San Onofre. It's a huge victory. But Kevin, we'll give the start to you, and then everybody else raise your hand, and we're going to go through here and figure out how to shut these reactors. So go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
I don't know. The key, I think, is to fight them with everything we have at every twist and turn and take advantage of every opportunity. And at Palisades, like Harvey said, it's unprecedented to bring back a dead reactor to life. So we've been calling it a zombie reactor. And what we just got a hold of through a Freedom of Information Act request to the state of Michigan is a nearly 1,000-page FOIA response. But the most important part of the FOIA response is Holtec's application to the U.S. Department of Energy. It's dated July 5th, 2022. So yes, over a year ago, but it's very revealing. And there's some really loaded language in there. For one thing, Holtec sees Palisades restart not as a national symbol, but as an international symbol. And they actually use some really hyperbolic language. They call it a shining talisman for the nuclear power industry worldwide. And they've even said it would reverse the shutdown trend in Western Europe. So they didn't say Germany and France, but that's what they meant. And they certainly meant it would reverse the shutdown trend of reactors here in the United States. And it's true, there was a record-breaking number of atomic reactor shutdowns between 2013 and 2023, more than a dozen, I believe, if you count Canada as well. And you know, Stan and Ofri is an amazing example where the company screwed up, it got greedy, it tried to run brand new steam generators way too hard, put way too many tubes in there to try to maximize electricity and maximize profit. And they damaged their own brand new steam generators. And a lot of groups jumped in. I mean, the list is a long one, but local grassroots groups like San Clemente Green, national groups like Friends of the Earth, expert witnesses like John Large from the United Kingdom and Arnie Gunderson from the US explained to the public and the media just what this meant. And you know, the NRC was going to do the wrong thing at San Onofre. They were going to let the company run the reactors at something like 70% power levels and call it safe with severely degraded steam generators that could cause a meltdown. And the good guys stopped it, you know, so a tremendous victory back in June of 2013. So at Palisades, they don't just have bad steam generators, they have a bad closure head on the vessel. That's a a Davis-Bessey pathway to meltdown. They have the worst embrittled reactor pressure vessel in the country. A close second is Point Beach in Wisconsin, also on Lake Michigan. So Lake Michigan is wedged between the two most embrittled reactor pressure vessels in the country. And then a close number 3 is Diablo Canyon Unit number 1. And some other badly embrittled reactors included Indian Point Unit 3, but thank goodness it's shut. And then Beaver Valley in Pennsylvania is another one that's bad and it's still operating. So an incredible revelation in this application by Holtec was that, yeah, they're a national leader in decommissioning and they're very proud of their accomplishments, breaking records. They're so fast at what they do. But they said the real motivation for acquiring these shutdown nuclear plants was not decommissioning per se, although they love to raid the decommissioning trust funds. It was to bank sites for future development of small modular reactors. And if you're following Holtec's behavior at Oyster Creek, New Jersey, a few years ago, they floated the trial balloon at Palisades last year, at Big Rock Point last year. So obviously there's a pattern where instead of decommissioning, now they're talking about small modular reactors, but they said it so blatantly in this secret application that we were never supposed to see. They said, you know, they didn't say Indian Point, New York. They didn't say Pilgrim, Massachusetts. They didn't say future sites they're going to get, but they said every one of these sites that we get, if the stars align, we're going to build small modular reactors. And so another revelation we learned about was $800 million more in federal bailouts than had ever been talked about before at Palisades. So the grand total now is $3 billion in Department of Energy bailouts, another $300 million from the state of Michigan. That's $3.3 billion just for the zombie reactor restart at Palisades. And the big one though is 4 small modular reactors at Palisades for $7.4 billion in DOE money. Grand total $10.7 billion in federal and state taxpayer giveaways to Holtec just at Palisades. And another revelation, we didn't know what a gouge the past power purchase agreement was between Entergy and Consumers Energy, but now we do, because Holtec wants to do the same thing all over again for 25 more years. And it turns out to be $412.5 million in annual revenues at Palisades.
Wow. Wait, you went dark here. Kevin, you got muted somehow. Okay, I'm trying to unmute you. There we go. Okay, so Kevin.
Yeah, somebody's muting me, not me.
Okay, well, everybody should know, of course, of Kevin. And let me put in two large topics to oversight before we go. I want to mention Carl Grossman on Long Island was instrumental in shutting the Shoreham plant, and Anna Georgie in Western Mass was instrumental and wrote a book, the book No Nukes, compiled the original compendium No Mooks, and was instrumental in keeping Montague from ever being built. Two factors here. First of all, the military dimension. You know, and Tatanka Bricker is a great pioneer in this thought. The nuclear power industries, we're scratching our heads here. Why are they keeping these nuclear reactors going? Economically, they're insane. They cause global warming. They make no sense whatsoever, even for the utilities in many cases. What is the big deal to keep them open? It has to be the military. These reactors are part of the military complex. Now, we talked last week with Pat Morita from Ohio, and to understand the depth of this, we got to look at what's happening at Piketon in Portsmouth in Southern Ohio. The traditional enrichment facilities there are making plans they're expanding, and they're making plans to take more nuclear fuel, more spent nuclear fuel down there. What are they going to do with it? They're going to produce nuclear weapons, depleted uranium, plutonium. So in our innocent walk in the park mentality here, we're scratching our heads. And this is the quote from Macron: "Without the Prime Minister of France, without civil nuclear power, there is no military nuclear power. And without military nuclear power, there is no civil nuclear power." It couldn't be more clear. So, when we're wondering why Gavin Newsom jumps in to keep Diablo Canyon open, we have to, at some point in time, deal with the reality of the military use of commercial nuclear power for personnel and for fuel and for infrastructure. And if we start shutting these commercial plants, the military is going to be, in a tough spot for keeping their chain alive. The second overview piece is embrittlement. I had a brief conversation with Arnie Gunderson. The embrittlement issue is a little more complicated at GE reactors than at Westinghouse, but it's clear enough. And there's no doubt that every nuclear plant in the country is going to have to refuel within 18 months or less. And all these reactors now are 40, or almost all of them are 40 years or older. So maybe we need an embrittlement alliance to deal with the nationwide with this particular instance of embrittlement, which affects all the reactors more clearly at the half that are Westinghouse, but nonetheless, it's an issue with General Electric reactors as well. So, okay, Steve, look at, there's you go. All this money going into Piketon, that's very, very troubling and very clear. And thankfully, we have Pat Morita, who's on the case there to explain what's going on. But I do want to start very quickly. The question is, having said that, how do we win? So I want to hear from the San Onofre people who have had the most recent major victory. What was the turning point in shutting San Onofre? We know we still dealing with the waste issue as per Mary Beth and Jim's excellent film. But what was the key to shutting these two reactors in California, and how does it apply to Diablo Canyon? Does anybody from the San Onofre 5? Okay, Donna Gilmore, go ahead, Donna, please.
Well, yes, one of the keys was that the city council and the businesses were believing Edison when they said, we're going to have blackouts if we don't have those reactors running. And so Barbara George had a handout that said we have a 40% surplus of power without any of the California reactors, without Dialog Canyon, without San Onofre, we had a 40% surplus. So we were not going to have blackouts. So I took Barbara's chart, made it simpler, simple visual with the public utility reference. And we took that to city council meetings and showed with the state's own evidence that we would be fine without San Onofre. And that made a major difference. And we kept it very bipartisan. Safety is everybody's problem. We did not talk about renewables. We wanted to have the Republicans and the Democrats, and we didn't want to muddy up the safety issue with an issue we were going to get pushback on. So we kept it very simple, speaking to what the people cared about. So we were able to get city council's resolutions passed to shut it down, keep it shut down. And that got us free media attention because we weren't able to get media to get the word out. So we were able to spread the word. We ended up having a big donor, and Laguna Beach brought in Friends of the Earth, and then we worked with them. And then somewhere along the line, we had Dave Freeman, and he was able to convince the Governor Edison, between the two of them, to not restart the plant. But there was a lot of pressure coming from a lot of different directions. It took a you want to hold a stool up, you need a lot of legs. So we had it coming at them from every direction. We also had the luck or unluck of San Onofre having the worst safety record of all the nuclear facilities in the country. And I took the safety allocation data from the NRC website and made a chart of it, a simple visual. And then we showed that to every city council. So when Edison got up there to say that everything's safe and people can see they have the worst safety record in the country, it shocked their credibility. So that helped make it easier.
You're saying that when you put the coup de grace on San Onofre, it was shut at that time.
We were working on this before the shutdown. We started working on this before the shutdown. Okay, we had before the steam generator failed. We were already working on it, the issue, and then at some point, the reactor shut down and they had an inspection. So it actually started. It wasn't over until after the shutdown, and then we focused on keeping it shut down.
What kind of inspection? Of course, we're asking for an inspection at Diablo. What kind of inspection did you have at San Onofre?
That was when it shut down. It was the steam generators. They inspected. We had a radiation release from the Unit 3 steam generator, and so that that shut it down. And then they had an NRC inspection of both and reactor 2 was down at that time. So we had both reactors were down at the same time. Number 2 was down for an inspection and fuel, refueling, and then 3 went offline. And the state of California never prepared for both reactors to be offline at the same time. That they were shocked that happened. So
how did the governor react to all this?
Dave Freeman, who was working on Friends of the Earth, he was working behind the scenes. He had worked for the governor before, so we were lucky to have an expert that the governor trusted and would believe. One of the problems we have now is getting experts, that they will believe. Like at Diablo Canyon, the safety committee there, the 3 experts hired by the state of California, they're playing cover for PG&E. They're covering for them. So having an expert that, the people in power that can negotiate, say with PG&E to shut it down, I'm not sure we have that. We have a lot of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's somebody's talking. We can hear.
Harvey, that one of the answers to your question was we turned a corner when we took a policy of contacting, which was a really aggressive action to contact our elected officials. At the city level, it was the most effective because these are people we go shopping with. They're at our school meetings. There are people that live next door. At the state level, at the federal level, these people are too far removed from the public. Your power as an activated populace is to use the people that are closest to you that you've already built trust with. The key issue in all of this was building a network of trust of people that all shared a common message, and to simplify a very complex problem that's over 70 years old. Most people are unaware of the nuclear problem at these nuclear power plants. And so educating the public with experts showing up at city council meetings, as Donna said, people like S. David Freeman, who ran the LA Department of Water and Power and Tennessee Valley Authority, when they spoke, their words carried weight. They were respected opinions about the dangers of these facilities.
Well, who's the counterpart now? I mean, Dave unfortunately is gone, and who's gonna play that role now at Diablo?
Well, the one of the key moments was when we decided to stop being a group of informed activists to being a group of informed federal regulators with independent voices. And I think mayors and county supervisors, and eventually the Prime Minister of Japan came to speak. We made sure we had a lot of press coverage when he came to speak. We funded him, we flew him here to California, and we told him to explain to the public what a nuclear accident at a nuclear power plant facility is like for surrounding communities. If you don't clarify what that is to people, you're talking amongst yourselves, because we are a group of concerned citizens with information that's not being transferred to other powerful voices in our communities. If those other powerful voices and interests like landowners, universities, hospitals, and so forth don't understand what a nuclear accident is. And so the Prime Minister, in a nutshell, in his discussions, we did many conferences with him. He just simply said, I almost lost Japan as a viable nation, not because of the reactors, but because of losing control of the spent nuclear fuel. And he had said, had we lost control of the spent nuclear fuel, I think it was on reactor 4, he said we would have had a hemispherical catastrophe thousands of times worse than the current Fukushima disaster. Now that trickles off to landowners, that trickles off to elected officials, certainly trickled off to Southern California Edison's board of directors that were listening in on this conference that we had. And I think that was a turning point too. There were many turning points, but I think that was the one just a couple days before the announcement on Wall Street that Edison was going to permanently close the San Onofre site. And that was the unassailable voices coming forward with clarity that they were comments about impacts as large as losing Japan as a viable nation from one industrial accident. That clarifies what all this fight is about. We can get down into the weeds about embrittlement and all these things, but the surrounding population that's busy with their own lives doesn't have the time to go as deep as all of us have gone in these issues. And so the clarifying what's at stake and what can be lost makes the discussion more real.
Well, can we think about bringing Nato Khan to San Luis Obispo? Would that make sense?
I think that's a great idea.
I saw in Jim and Mary Beth's fabulous film that his testimony was astounding. One of the interesting notes is that you're right, it was the spent fuel pool at Unit 4, and Unit 4 was shut. at the time. There was no meltdown at Unit
He,
4.
he
It
said
exploded
that the
from
only
hydrogen.
reason we didn't lose Japan and surrounding areas and possibly even portions of the United States, it wasn't because of the workers on site that kept the fuel cool. It was an aftershock that jostled open a valve that allowed coolant water in the last hours before they lost control of that fuel to flood that spent fuel pool 4 with coolant. They were getting ready to
I've never
prepare an
heard that
evacuation
one.
order.
I've
The
never
Prime
heard
Minister
that.
was getting ready to issue an evacuation order out 160 miles, which included Tokyo and a population of 55 million people. He said, where would I send 55 million people? Where would they go?
Gaza.
That was the reality of Fukushima that you never heard about. We talked about it. We spent many, many days with him. And those are the kinds of facts that need to leak out. It wouldn't just be the surrounding area around Diablo that would be wiped out. It would be a path across the United States, across the Atlantic into Europe that would be impacted by a spent fuel accident at Diablo Canyon triggered by a big earthquake. And I want to say one thing. We went to a San Diego Association of Geologists meeting before the shutdown. And Edison had hosted this meeting, and they wanted to get feedback from the geologists about their take on the risks of seismic risks to San Onofre. At the end of the meeting, there was a question and answer session, and one guy got up and he said, I did all the seismic fault mapping around Diablo Canyon. And if we knew that there was a fault there, and we knew where the starting point, but we didn't know where the finished ending point of that fault line is, we left it off of the map. And the risk assessment was based off of this map that had all these fault lines missing. Those kinds of comments shift the discussion away from safe operation to what the hell are we doing thinking about restarting this or keeping this facility running? And those are the pieces of information.
Can we replicate this? Does it make sense to try and replicate what you did at San Onofre at San Luis Obispo?
I know that Donna and myself, we spent a dozen years, full time, where there's a lot of groundwork done. Donna's got a wealth of information. Just her information alone is enough to shut down Diablo. There's a wealth of information from all the people that got involved in this. Ace Hoffman is a wealth of information too. I know he's on.
Well, you guys all need to move to San Luis Obispo and let's get this done. Torgan Tatanka, who's actually in the vicinity up there, has a hand, but we need to apply this. This is amazing. Go ahead, Tatanka.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So what needs to be done is you need to identify who all the key interests are involved in Diablo. And, the key one is the public, and they're always marginalized and left out. It's very important to have voices at microphones, but who are all the key interests? The university seems to be a big one. If you were to just quantify what the land improvements are, what the economic significance is to the local community to have that university and all the students that it hosts there, that's a huge number. It's much larger than anything that Diablo Canyon can claim as an economic benefit for the area. If it's explained that those things could be lost in a few hours with an accident at Diablo Canyon, that shifts the conversation in the direction of public interest and protecting land improvements, which is what everybody's interest is, our safety and protecting our homes and our families and our properties.
Morgan, did you, the investment part of that, where the stock prices and that issue after?
Yeah, there was the reason why Edison announced the closure on Friday, the opening bell on Wall Street, was they were afraid of investor flight. The approaching them with unassailable voices that were very critical of nuclear power, and especially damaged nuclear reactors being restarted, or in your case, embrittled reactors being considered for relicensing, that erodes public confidence in the whole scheme at Diablo Canyon, that this is worth keeping open and operating upwind of the continental United States. That's the
Okay.
discussion. That's a scale that you got to shift this.
Well, maybe we should think about bringing him back. Let's get to Tonka and then Linda Seeley in Torgan. That's really powerful stuff, and Donna. So let's move with it. To Tonka and then Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Torgan.
For that report. I mean, I see a roadmap now, and I was echoing the same thing that Harvey was talking earlier. And I have some things I want to say, but I want to yield my time to Linda Seeley, who has lived in this area far longer than Carol and I have. We just moved here a few months ago. And so part of this has to be tailored to us. We have a timeline, a short timeline on trying not to have it reopen. So Linda, why don't you take it and talk about the timelines we're dealing with? And then I love having the Prime Minister of Japan, but we've got to, yes, the university, yes, the land values, yes, the whole notion. I mean, I've got a lot of ideas, but I want to save it till after you talk. Go ahead, Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you, Torgan and Donna. And Ace.
Jim and Mary Beth, and we have Ace Hoffman on as well.
Yeah. And Tatanka and Jim and Mary Beth. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Mothers for Peace, you know, we've been approaching this through the courts. And I think that it's time that we do. I mean, if we could have a public forum with someone like Naoto Kan and Greg Yasko, and
Peter Bradford.
Peter Bradford is already working with us every day. So we have put all of our time and resources now into hiring, for instance, expert witnesses. Number one, like the sort of the most highly esteemed metals expert in the world, whose name is Digby McDonald. And he has written a report that's been submitted to the California Public Utilities Commission and the NRC, talking about the embrittlement at Diablo Canyon and how it is severe, and it probably reached its the tolerance that it could take maybe last year, or it's like give or take some number of years, but it's a very dangerous situation. And Unit 1, the unit that we're really worried about is Unit 1 because of the components of the metals that are in the reactor vessel. And so the Independent Safety Committee at our urging has hired an independent metals expert also. And we want, and his name is Mark Kirk, K-I-R-K, Donna, for you to investigate if you wish. He seems to be, you know, a straight up guy. And what we want is for Digby McDonald and Mark Kirk to talk to each other and compare notes on this embrittlement issue, because they are the ones who actually are experts in this very obscure science that is impossible for like a lay person to understand, truly. And
let me just throw in real quick, as mentioned before, we want to have a national, I think we need a national group that will focus the embrittlement issue on all the reactors in the country, because they're all, except for the two at Vogtle, they're all embrittled, and they all have to shut at some point for refueling.
Absolutely.
So we can have a subcommittee and talk to Arnie and you know, have a subcommittee on nothing but embrittlement in old reactors to swoop in when they refuel. Just a sideline there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. But right now, Unit 1 is down. It's stopped for refueling, and we have petitioned the governor, and we have a petition for the public to sign that I posted on the chat here. But and we have also written letters, and we're talking to state legislators and to our local representatives about forcing PG&E to draw what's called a coupon from the inside of the reactor vessel to test it for embrittlement, because we know that it's embrittled, and because they haven't tested anything for over 20 years, for one thing. And then there's also another test, an ultrasonic test of the interior of the reactor vessel that they have to do, that they have not done for 15 years. And so those things have to be done now while this reactor vessel is down.
So how do we force this to happen? And how do we force it to be the key to keep Diablo from shutting? Kevin, you have real quick information on Mark Kirk? Kevin Camps? You said something about Mark Kirk. Hold on, I gotta unmute you. Go ahead.
It's not me doing it.
Yeah, go ahead, real quick.
I hope that Mark Kirk has had a change of heart. He was our adversary when he was the top technical staffer at the NRC on this issue at Palisades. They would fly him out here to try to calm everybody down. And I hope he's had a change of heart. I would just, caution everybody, Linda and everybody, just to be careful and know his history. I'd be happy to tell you our experience going back 15, 20 years with the guy.
Same with Digby McDonald. He is no friend of the anti-nuclear people. He's pro-nuclear, but he did the calculations on Diablo Canyon. He was stunned. And I'm hoping that what?
Go ahead. I was going to say one thing about Mark Kirk is he sometimes give the man a microphone. I mean, one time in a technical meeting, he said, pressurized thermal shock. You don't even need the pressure. I forget which one it was. The pressure or the temperature was all you needed to fracture the wall clean through. You didn't need the other one. And so he just put that out there. Like, if it's bad enough, you don't need both. You just need the one.
Right. Well, that's the kind of stuff we need to turn that into political clout now. And that's what we have to do.
And that's what I'm thinking about what Torgen was talking about having a public, like a big public meeting here to let the public in on this, because nobody really knows about it up here in San Luis Obispo. I mean, all of us do, of course, but the greater public. And as you said, the university, Cal Poly is probably the most conservative university in California. It's the whitest, it's the richest, and most conservative, and it's like probably over half of the funding comes from the war industries, because it's a polytechnic university, and so their funding comes from Raytheon and Boeing and Lockheed Martin and all that, and it's just flowing.
Well, we're gonna whatever we do right now within the time frame of the refueling at Diablo is probably gonna have to be done by Zoom. But if we can maybe get NATOCON and put together, and these other people, and put together a major Zoom within the next couple of weeks, I can get it on radio, and we can maybe move from there. Tatanka, you wanted to talk again, and we got Donna Gilmore has a hand, and Wendy, go ahead, Tatanka.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to get the conversation out there about the direness of the situation. It's not like this is critical. We know there's 13 nuclear faults going underneath that power plant. We know that the embrittlement issue won't cause very likely won't cause a meltdown. It'll cause an explosion. And so, and in either case, you've got all of LA County before you get the rest of the nation in Europe. You've got so many people, and I just keep sparking off things. Don't we have some sort of laws that people follow in the state to talk about earthquake preparedness? Is this a part of it? Does anybody know? Is anybody prepared if there's an earthquake? What happens in Diablo, which we can say with some certainty that at some point an earthquake fault is going to trigger this worst of all possible situations. And it could happen today. It could happen 10 years from now. We really need to talk about We might even have, I mean, I'm thinking zany now because I'm trying to keep a sense of humor. We need to have a contest. No, we don't think we're number 3. We think we're number 1 on embrittlement because we haven't been tested for 20 years. We want to be number 1. Then we can have all the people that shut down number 2, number 1 and number 2 help shut this one down. You know, I mean, it gets weird. You know, what are the Vegas odds of a student not being able to get through grad school before an earthquake, or the kids? I mean, this is where I'm going, but we have to stay focused on as was revealed here, on what the facts are, get the university involved, get people involved where they are, and go local and spread out. And yeah, get something happening before this reopen date. And the Prime Minister of Japan would be fantastic.
Well,
But-
obviously we wouldn't be able to get him there in person on time, but maybe we can get him on a Zoom. That would be, I don't know.
or
Donna,
maybe he comes at a later time. I don't know. We just have to figure.
Donna and
We
Torgan,
hosted
you
him.
have connections, and we'll go to Wendy and Myra.
We
Donna?
Yeah,
hosted him
I
at
think,
Oregon?
I think it needs to be much simpler. What everyday people care about, they care about not having a blackout. That's what they care about. They're not, oh, embrittlement, what's that? Earthquake. Well, we live in earthquake land. We're desensitized to earthquake. Well, we just hope it doesn't happen so we can have hope. But you tell people they're going to have blackouts because of how unreliable Diablo Canyon is, and that's something they can relate to and care about, and it's a very simple message. And we have enough evidence, the government's own evidence, to show that. So just think of what people care about personally. You know, it's kind of part of selling, because that was a big turning point. When I tried to do, when I worked on the initiative to shut down both reactors, the state initiative, we go out on the street, everybody says, yeah, I hope we don't have an earthquake. The earthquake story didn't move people. But when we showed what a horrible safety record, and we showed that we were going to have, we don't need it, we don't need it. And now we got a case where we can show that there's going to be blackouts if you're relying on Diablo. I mean, they have parts there that they run it to the ground, even with nuclear. And we have their reputation, PG&E's reputation of basically starting fires and burning people alive. And this is who we're trusting. I think it needs to be simpler messaging. I wouldn't rely too much on the earthquake. It didn't work at all.
Thank
Okay.
you. Can we
Torgan?
hear from Dorgan
Yeah,
and Linda?
I want to say that we hosted Neotacon in San Diego. We hosted him in New York. We hosted him in Boston, and we did 5 conferences in Japan. You can get a person like that to speak on your behalf with an unassailable voice. We did it. And if you're serious about doing it at Diablo, we can talk about that.
Yes, but we need to talk about budgeting and time frame. So we'll talk to you again. This isn't the time to get into specifics. Thank you though.
I agree. If we can get him here on site and then Zoom it, and then we'll figure out the funding. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, well, let's talk further about that.
Can I bring up one more point?
Real quick, Donna.
This ties into the new reactor, because there's actually legislation in California to start bringing in SMRs. And the new scale reactor is the first reactor that's been approved nationwide. By the NRC, but they approved a reactor with bad steam generators. So I think it's really important for people to know we cannot trust the NRC to protect our safety. And I think the San Onofre Syndrome movie does an excellent job of telling regular people you can't trust the NRC to protect our safety. And everybody, the elected officials, the public, they're counting on the NRC to do their job, and they really don't know that they're not doing it. So this movie is really good on that point. So on the SMRs, if people knew that the first reactor, small modular reactor that the NRC approved, has bad steam generators, and they approved it anyway. What does that say about the NRC's credibility? What does that say about a company that would submit a design with defective reactors? And that's what shuts San Onofre down. So I think it ties together. We want them to oppose. But
the question then is, how do we turn that into public presence that can flip the switch. That's what we really need to figure out. I want to call on Robert Freeling really quickly because he can very quickly make it clear. He's got the numbers, he's done the presentations, that we do not in any way, shape, or form. Not only don't we need Diablo Canyon, but the power from Diablo Canyon is a detriment. Can you speak to that real quickly, Robert?
Yeah, there are a couple sides to that question. One is that we don't need it. Donna raised how Barbara George apparently shared with you the enormous surplus that the state had a decade ago when San Onofre closed. We are in the same situation today, and if you're interested, I could share with you public documents that demonstrate this. The North American Electric Reliability Council puts out an annual report showing how much resources there are in different regions of the country, and they showed California with a 35% surplus above the forecast peak demand. The state adopts a standard of about 16% at this point as a reserve. So we're way above that. And Diablo Canyon is a little less than 5%. So if you got rid of Diablo Canyon, we'd still have a 30% reserve. The state, however, is quaking. The agencies are quaking at the feet of the governor. And so they're trying to come up any opportunity they can to use the word shortfall, even though they're doing pretzels around it, saying, yeah, we have plenty of power to keep the lights on this summer and for the foreseeable future. But they say, well, if something else happened and then something else and something else and something else, then we could have a shortfall. They gave the example of last September when we had an extreme heat wave. And you may remember the power did not go out last September. And they said that was equivalent to a 26% reserve margin, meaning they're effectively acknowledging that we have this huge surplus reserve.
Okay, all right, that's good.
So that's one side.
Robert's-
I want to answer the other half of your question, if you.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Which is how it interferes with renewable energy. This was PG&E's own testimony in shutting down Diablo Canyon in 2016. They stated that continuing to operate Diablo Canyon after 2025 would result in the curtailment, meaning the cutting off of somewhere between 800 and 2,400 gigawatt hours a year of solar energy. And that's because they can cut down the output of solar plants, but they can't do that for Diablo Canyon. Diablo Canyon is inflexible. It's like a bulldozer, and it's going to push any other type of generation out of the way. So that's equivalent to offsetting somewhere between 5 and 15% of the annual generation. Now, the fact is we're having far more solar energy coming online than they ever anticipated back then. So there's more opportunity to interfere.
So Robert is a great expert on this, and there's absolutely no doubt that the two things that he says and can back up are true, and we got them from him, which is A, California has more than enough power, and B, the power from Diablo pushes cheaper stuff offline. We just had an instance in Finland. They built this Okoyuto reactor for 15 years, spent, I don't know, 15 billion, 20 billion euros on it. And they brought it online in May of this year. And before the end of May, they had to shut it back down or cut it way back because there was a massive influx of wind and hydropower. And they couldn't even begin to compete. So it's the same situation with Diablo. Thank you for that, Robert. And remember, we're on solid ground when we make that argument. So
absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, very quickly now, Wendy, Mila, and Jennifer Tanner has joined us. Go ahead, Wendy, please, quickly.
Thank you very much. Two really quick points. I just want to reiterate to include, you have to include the youth groups and the youth climate influencers because they have just been gobbled up by the cultists. Just include them in the conversation to debunk some of the myths, let them know it's not carbon neutral, it's uninsurable. Again, the percentage of actual use of Sunrise Movement, Waterkeeper, 0 Hour, and just maybe Google some of the un-F the planet is another one. You guys need to get to them. And the other one I just want to say quickly is biochemistry professors and oncologists need to be testifying in part of year. I just really quick anecdote. It always stayed with me. I was late going to college. I was in my 30s and I was taking a biochemistry class when Fukushima happened. I had one of the best professors I ever had was from Nigeria, biochemistry professor, very, very stoic man. And I could tell he was shaken to his core and he would not answer questions during class about Fukushima. So I waited after class and I stayed there and I was like, tell me what's going on. And he said to me, the Japanese race will never be the same. You guys need to get the biochemistry professors involved because their hearts are in it, and the oncologists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wendy. Very good. Appreciate that. Mila, go ahead, and then Jennifer Tanner.
Just quickly, I wanted to say, just so listeners are aware, Diablo does not sit on 13 fault lines, but it's in the vicinity. There's a small radius. And it sits in an area that is riddled with earthquake faults, but they're not all directly under the plant. Just wanted to correct that. And I think that it's important to what Donna Gilmore said about the rationale that had convinced local leaders near San Onofre that they had to keep the plant open in order to avoid blackouts, et cetera. That's the same rationale that's being used by Gavin Newsom now to extend the life of Diablo. And I was wondering if Linda could talk about the California Energy Commission study that left out wind and solar in their study about replacing the energy from Diablo.
Yeah, there was a bill, SB 846, that was responsible for keeping Diablo Canyon open, that was passed by the legislature last August, in August of 22. In that bill, it said there were certain criteria that they spelled out that had to be met. One of them was that the California Energy Commission had to do a study of how much renewable energy is available to the state of California to see if we actually do need Diablo Canyon. And we were greatly anticipating this study. It was published on the 26th of September, I think. Maybe a little bit before then, and it was supposed to be this really robust report assessing everything that was, all the energy that was available. We get the report. Number one, it's a preliminary report. Number two, they literally, what Mila just said, they said, well, we can't count solar in this thing because solar might run into some supply line difficulties. Oh, and we can't count wind in this either because, wind has had problems. It's the workers are non-union and they may not be able to do what they need to do. They left out practically all renewable power sources. And then they came to the conclusion that, gee whiz, we need Diablo Canyon because, well, of course we need Diablo Canyon. If we don't have any wind, we don't have any solar, and we don't have any hydrothermal. Oh, and they didn't count hydropower either because, well, we might not ever get any more rain. So it was a ludicrous report. And that's what they submitted as, their report to the California Public Utilities Commission, which is going to base its decision on that report. So we've challenged that at the CPUC, as have quite a few other groups. But
Let me ask you, Linda, at the Mothers, what do you most need right now?
We need people to call, every one of you to call your state representatives, both your state senator and your state assembly person, and say, look, Diablo Canyon Unit 1 needs to be inspected, and we want you to do whatever you can do to make sure that the inside of the Unit 1 is inspected now during this outage. Yet that is the one thing that everybody on this call can do today.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer Tanner, Carl Grossman, and Justin. Jennifer, and then Carl.
Yeah, so I think Dr. Jim Stewart is on the call. He and I together wrote a letter that 120 groups have signed. That pretty much is bringing in like 120,000 people. We are about to send this letter to all 120 legislators. We were just waiting to send it, and it talks about everything we've been talking about, that the bill that Newsom strong-armed everybody to sign, he promised certain things. We're going to do this test and this test and this test, and PG&E isn't doing it. We're saying in this 50-day window where we're refueling, we demand that we have these tests. So that's all in the letter. It's beautifully laid out. And we've just connected with Assemblywoman Friedman. Thank you, Mila Reason, for getting her to do that. I talked to Laura Friedman this morning, and she's going to take a letter off of our letter and get legislators to sign that. So with our letter of 120 groups and counting, and Laura's letter getting legislators, and then as soon as the letters go out in the next day or two, we're then going to do calls just like what you were saying, Harvey, get people to make phone calls. Every single person call their legislator, and we want the tests during the window of the 50 days. It's really simple, but we'll be sending out a script in the next day or two. And that is our action. And then hopefully some of these legislators may be able to get a press conference about this and get public attention. We're not saying shut it down, even though we want to shut it down. We're saying do the due diligence test. And once they do the test, it will shut itself down. That's what we believe.
We hope. Thank you for that, Jennifer.
Jim,
and
did you
one thing I
want
want to mention, by the way, is I may be able to get an hour for us on KPFK, reviving our Solartopia show. And I want to invite everybody back, and we will do a Zoom that we will also send to the rest of the Pacifica network and put it out wherever we possibly can. Jim Stewart, you're with us, but Carl Grossman had a hand real quick, and then Jim.
So Jim is following me, so could you just let Jim?
All right, go ahead, Jim, and then.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that it's been a pleasure to work with Jennifer on doing this letter. I just shared the link to our letter in the chat.
Okay.
And I will also share the link if you have a group that hasn't yet joined the 120 people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Much appreciated. I want to mention Jim and Mary Beth, the great filmmakers are on. Jim, if you guys want to make sense, more award-winning San Onofre syndrome film, if you want to jump in, please raise your hand. Carl Grossman was one of the architects of the shutdown of the Shoreham reactor in New York. Carl, in your sage advice, what do we need to do to keep Diablo Canyon shut? Hold on. Go.
I don't know, but I can tell you how, because it wasn't just Shoreham, it was 7 to 11 nuclear power plants that would be built on Long Island. Long Island was to be turned at that time, this is in the parlance of the nuclear promoters, into a nuclear park. And what did it, and again, this might not apply too widely, but I think it applies, is creation of a public power authority with the power of condemnation. Indeed, in the current issue of the Progressive magazine, this is the November issue, headlined "A Power Struggle," and they're talking about the Pine Street Tree State, Maine, and speaks about there's going to be a referendum in Maine for a public power entity. Public power offers cheaper, more reliable service. Public power, in connection then with condemnation, offers more than that. It can cause the blockage of nuclear power. How this idea was formulated on Long Island, it was an attorney, a prominent environmental attorney, Irving Like, who realized when the nuclear juggernaut took form in the 50s, the federal government preempted localities and states from all kind of authority. But Irv realized that condemnation power continued. And although there were all kinds of actions on Long Island, protests, 15,000 people, 600 arrests, evacuation as a big challenge that held things up for a couple of years. The NRC, after the TMI accident, required an evacuation plan to be implemented. Long Island and New York State said, impossible on this island with all these people to evacuate. In the end, that didn't work. The White House created a private security operation out of the utility to run an evacuation. Politics, grassroots entities rose, and with national entities fought nuclear power on Long Island. There was litigation, including a RICO lawsuit. Media, as much as we could get it, considering that the New York Times, major newspaper, Newsday, pushing nuclear power. But what finally stopped the plan for 7 to 11 nuclear power plants and blocked the commercial operation of the first of the 7 to 11, Shoreham, which now sits along a Long Island Sound as a big cement hulk, was the creation of LIPA with condemnation power. The utility, so fearful of being eliminated, as it would have been, it ultimately went out of business in any case because of LIPA, just gave up and for $1 turned Shoreham over to the state for decommissioning as a nuclear power plant. And thus there's no nuclear power plants on Long Island today. Again, this might not apply all over, but one area to create a mechanism because it's so hard to get something done in a state legislature or in the Congress so dominated by contributions from the nuclear industry. This mechanism, which was done on Long Island, I think could be very helpful. But just let me add one thing. Today in 2023, one has to deal very forcefully with the claim that climate change requires nuclear power as an antidote. And people have to understand that the nuclear fuel cycle is highly carbon intensive, and nuclear power plants themselves, they emit carbon-14, radioactive carbon. Just let me end with the whole story about how Long Island was, nuclear power was blocked on Long Island is in the book I wrote called Power Crazy, published by Grove Press. You can get a used copy. It's all very detailed how it was done step by step. And in terms of the climate change stuff, I'm doing all I can now with my TV company out of a nationally aired show to deal with the baloney that nuclear power is carbon free. You might want to go to envirovideo.com and see one of the shows I've done on this issue, the hoax that nuclear power is green. Alec Baldwin is involved in it and others.
Well, Carl's show is great. You've been doing it for a long time. Maybe you could do a show specifically on Diablo and embrittlement. And I think we also have to push now this connection to the military, because this stuff makes no sense in any sane and rational world. The military has to be involved in keeping these plants going. I can't see any other explanation. Justin and then Mary Beth and Jim. Justin, very quickly. No,
I'm here. So Rancho Seco in Sacramento area was a nuclear power plant that had to shut down because of cooling issues. That is something that's also in play with Diablo Canyon with its once through cooling system and the rust that's been found all over it. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't know that the municipal SMUD was responsible for that shutdown.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So in San Luis Obispo,
the referendum in 1989, where it could not have had a referendum on a nuclear plant if the public didn't own it. And Rancho Seco was publicly owned because of SMUD, and that's why we shut it.
Yeah, so it's different, obviously, with Diablo and something about the public power agencies in that area. There was a 3-county alliance for public power, and the board was taken over much like the Pacifica board, and bylaws rewritten to probably in many ways to try to prevent shutdown of Diablo. So that's not a reliable avenue here. But what is interesting to mention, based on what other callers have said, is that Diablo Canyon still is a liability for grid reliability in California. There's a P-1, N-1 standard that basically says the largest power plant is the one you have to plan for. And in these severe events, it's not hypothetical. In 2020, the blackouts that we faced weren't actually because we didn't have reserve. It's because PG&E was afraid we wouldn't have reserve if Diablo went down. So that's right. Diablo was the cause of the blackouts in that time. And it could be the cause of the blackouts in other cases because it requires hydropower to keep it from overloading the rails. And that hydropower could be used as a storage on-demand system in the case of intensive power usage.
So, okay, so, excellent. Thank you for that. There are CCAs in the area, and Carl raised the issue of public power. I don't know how the CCAs might play in to the dynamic. I'm sure you do, Linda. We're beyond the 6 o'clock hour. We have 44 people with us, but I want to keep going. Wendy or Steve, if you can keep us going, that would be excellent. And I will want to do a separate Zoom just on Diablo in the future that we can put on the radio. Jim and Mary Beth, congratulations on your great film and your awards. And fill us in. What do you got to say?
Thank you so much for inviting the folks from San Onofre to compare notes with the people at Diablo. I think this has been such a rich discussion, and also to hear from Carl and what's happening in Ohio and Michigan. It's amazing. I just wanted to say, if the waste issue cuts across everything, and that's the focus of San Onofre syndrome. And if you wanted to sign up to our newsletter, which you can do by going to sanonofresyndrome.com, then we'll have the latest screening opportunities and how to get a hold of that film for anybody who would like to see it.
It's a great film, and thank you very much. And you know, it does celebrate a victory. Shutting San Onofre did not have to shut. They would have brought in, paid the money, and if they got the federal money and bought new generators, whatever else they wanted, they would have ignored the leak. They would have done whatever they could have done or needed to do. But you guys conjured up the political power to stop them from doing it. So now we've got to do this at Diablo Canyon.
Right.
And we need to find the key. Linda, there's some good ideas. We need to, of course, support the mothers. And I hope we figure out how to do this but as soon as possible. We don't have any choice.
Right.
So what is the time frame now on the reopening of Diablo? How much time do we have before Unit 1 is supposed to go back online?
I think we have about 6 weeks.
Really? All right. That's a little more than I thought we would. 6 weeks is a lifetime. So one of the things I want to do is stage another Zoom. Let's bring in Arnie Gunderson, maybe Peter Bradford, Dan Hirsch. Anybody else have a suggestion for the next Zoom call that will be focused, and we'll put it on the radio. We'll put it out on the internet, and we'll really build an audience for it and make it useful and maybe what we should do is get Nato Khan.
Yes, exactly. And also Torgan Johnston.
And Torgan's with us. I assume he'll come back. We also have Pat Morita to keep us grounded in what's going on at Piketon. I think the argument that's being made that the military is playing a role in keeping these reactors open has to be emphasized. I mean, Tatanka's been pushing it for a while, but if you look from Pat's reporting at what's going on in Ohio, they're pouring tons and tons of money into this old site, and with the enrichment and plutonium. Rocky Flats, which used to do the plutonium, is shut, but they still got Ohio. Jim and Mary Beth, did you want to throw something in here?
And excuse me, but it's also Los Alamos National Labs that's producing plutonium.
Right. Los Alamos is still open, unfortunately. Jim, Mary Beth?
I just wanted to mention Bruce Gagnon should be part of this conversation. He's the head of space for peace. And that's where a lot of the focus from the military is going with the use of nuclear. And also, of course, to extract themselves from being dependent on the Russian and Kazakhstan suppliers of the US uranium and plutonium and so on. So that's what's going on in the background. And so they're gearing up here to get back in the manufacturing game so that they can compete with Russia and China.
Well, at this point, go ahead, Jim.
We've been commenting in a number of previous articles on our blogs, which are you can find us on Substack Planetarian Perspectives and also on knownukeca.net. I particularly recommend if this whole military connection is a new idea to you, I recommend a kind of comprehensive coverage we did in an article called "We Are Armageddon Man," talking about the fact that the real nuclear triad is energy, weapons, and waste.
Well, if you'll put the link to that in the chat, that would be really good. I think we should have Scott Denman on with us the next time. Kevin, come back, maybe Paul and Linda Gunter. We really need a summit here to lay out our strategy for fighting the industry going forward, because we're really at a turning point here. I mean, no sane economist without a dog in the race here would ever support nuclear power in the current economy. I mean, there was a giant article in the New York Times yesterday about very never mentioned the word nuclear. And the Times has been very nuclear for decades, pro-nuclear. And this is an incredibly supportive piece of the tsunami of wind and solar that's going on worldwide. I mean, this technology is just literally blowing everybody away. It didn't mention it in this. Well, the two other pieces, one was agrivoltaics. It was a great article in the Times on how compatible renewable solar panels are with agriculture. It's really interesting about, growing crops under solar panels. The public vision is if you put solar panels on ag land, you lose the agriculture. It's absolutely not true. And especially with livestock. I mean, I'm a vegan, but cows, sheep, goats, all like being under solar panels. And there are lots and lots of shade crops that do very well under solar panels. It's really interesting. They failed to mention canals and aqueducts, but that's another piece of it. So it's all out there. I don't see any other explanation for the push for nuclear than the military. And the extrication or the upgrade at Piketon, and I guess at Los Alamos, I don't know what's going on at Los Alamos, but Pat gives us a good report on Piketon, is that they obviously are intending to take spent fuel from the ongoing reactors and do something for the small reactors. Because right now we're dependent on Russia, and that's not going to last. Okay, we had someone. Who is next? There's someone next that had a hand up. Sorry, Steve. What's that? Okay,
Cale Walker.
Cale Walker. Go ahead, Cale.
Hi. I could say all sorts of things about all of this. I just wanted to say the Atoms for Peace strategy is now, I would say, Atoms for Climate, because everything they're really promoting these SMRs for climate, and they're using very much the same playbook, huge funding, huge propaganda to Congress. They're sneaking all this huge funding into their Inflation Reduction bill, all of this stuff, all is hugely funding corporate, public-private partnerships for a lot of these SMRs. So they're using that model also, which really, muckies up the water on a certain level. But the playbook and the getting into the universities to do pro-nuclear for the for the students on all grade levels, I've been watching that this last year or so, and it's unbelievable how everyone is just, in positions of power. They're just accepting the concept that nuclear is required to fight climate change. And so everything that people have been saying here has not been getting out past the sound barrier to regular people. And I missed middle part of the meeting, but there was so much talk about Ohio at the beginning of the meeting. And that's really where the tip of the spear is for these new SMRs with the new fuel. They want to put this super high burn up, high enriched fuel into the reactors, which is going to make all of the problems of the canisters and everything hugely worse. I mean, they've got this train they're ready to send down the track, and it's completely, out of control. The NRC's, doing all of this. So that was just kind of a larger perspective, but I wanted to say, like, there's several power plants that are up for license renewal or extension. And I feel that in order to break the sound barrier, behind the scenes, somehow people should be connecting with the people in Ohio who are working on Perry, or the people who are in South Carolina working against Oconee, whatever you call it, or VC Summer. All of these power plants, they're facing the same thing, and they don't have as strong of a network of people as this group does. But the people who are looking at it are desperate for connecting, networking, and stuff. So I just wanted to throw in a word for collaboration.
One of the reasons we thank you, Kale. Thank you for that. And one of the reasons we have to, you mentioned exactly under opposed reactors, let's put it that way, is we have to have a very clear, definitive piece on embrittlement, because all these old reactors are embrittled. And it is illegal. There is precedent. The NRC refused to allow the reopening of the Yankee Row plant in 1992 because of embrittlement. And that's all we need. And so I think all these small, besieged groups in remote areas need to have a definitive piece that's usable on embrittlement. So, Kale, thank you so much for that.
Can I just add one other final thought? There was so much in the first hour. There was all these other issues, and people are working on all these other issues, and we need to cross-pollinate. So the people who are working on women's rights issues, or all of these different activist groups need to be clued in on this nuclear issue. It has to become like, the thing to become anti-nuclear again. Now it's become all the anti-nuclear activists of back in the day are kind of backed off and watered down their attitude, and maybe it's okay. But I think that they need to get the memo and join the fun.
Okay, good. Thank you. And Kale, are you on our list? I don't know if are you getting
yes, I am. Yeah, I am.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Mila, then Tatanka, and then we're getting close to 4:20, but I want to go over, I don't know, Steve, if you could.
Mariah hasn't spoken yet.
Oh, I have. Oh, Pat, you have your hand. Go ahead, Pat, please, and then Mila, and then Tatanka. Can you keep us going, Steve or Wendy?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. You can go out and toke up. It's 4:20, but just leave the Zoom on. Go ahead, Pat, please, and then Mila and Tatanka.
So the Portsmouth nuclear site is actually at Piketon, Ohio, and there they have these new plans, and they're actually beginning to start enriching uranium using centrifuges, and they're going to enrich it for reactors that aren't built yet. And it's going to be called high assay low enriched uranium, but it's really high enriched because at 20%, that is the NRC's definition of high enriched. So what are they saying they will enrich it to? 19.75%, an impossibly precise figure. And they're actually licensed to enrich it to 25%. And why 19.75%? Well, because at 20%, it cannot be exported. They want to export this stuff. They want to export these so-called small reactors to other countries where they can then have political clout in these countries, though these countries will be more or less obligated to support the United States in its military and so forth. And at that enrichment, it's very easy to enrich it further to like 90% for weapons. So everyone across the country, there's just all kinds of anti-nuclear experts saying that this is really the military and civilian overlap here for sure.
Wow, thank you for that, Pat, and thank you for being in Ohio to scout that out for us.
And there are other military also with the depleted uranium. Now they're making the precursor to use the depleted uranium at the Portsmouth site in Piketon for weapons.
Yeah.
Mara, go ahead.
I wanted to clarify what I said about Los Alamos. Well, for years, Rocky Flats was the site where they fashioned the triggers for thermonuclear bombs out of plutonium. They created plutonium triggers for the bombs, and they were forced to shut down because there was so much plutonium that had contaminated air ducts and various other parts of the facility that there were fires that were just uncontrollable, and so they shut Rocky Flats and had to find a new facility to fashion these plutonium triggers. And they decided to do it at Los Alamos. So I misspoke. It's not the production of the plutonium that occurs at Los Alamos, but it's the fashioning the plutonium into triggers for nuclear bombs.
And I actually marched at Rocky Flats, and right next to Rocky Flats, which is shut, is the National Renewable Energy Lab, National Renewable Energy Lab, where they test windmills and solar panels. It's quite ironic. Tatanka, go ahead. Are you unmuted? Can we unmute Tatanka?
Yeah, I finally got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a logistical thing, Harvey. If possible, I'd like to meet with whomever you think is important. This is logistical, either tomorrow or the next day. It doesn't have to be a long meeting, but get some key people together to put out a timeline. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, but the 50 days Jennifer talked about, Jennifer Tanner is doing great work, is 7 weeks, and you were estimated 6 weeks. It's not tied to a specific date they've said, right? We're guessing.
No. Yeah, we're guessing.
They're not telling us anything.
Okay, so I think 6 weeks. We'd be prudent. We do 6 weeks, and let's just get together. This has been so great today. A lot of great input, a lot of great people doing great work. So I don't want to lose the connections that can really help us move forward. So if that's possible, you don't have to decide that now, but Sluggo, if we can get something on Zoom.
So I want to pull together another 2-hour session that we will Zoom. We'll record. We'll put it online. We'll put it on the radio. It's got to be within 10 days or so. We'll get Peter Bradford and Greg Yasko if we can, and Nato Khan. If we can get Nato Khan, that would be big. So maybe Jim, Mary Beth, Torgan, Donna, and all four of you need to move to San Luis Obispo. I'm sure that Linda can find you a cheap apartment, and this has got to happen here.
I'm in Monterey now, so.
Oh, you're not far. You're closer than you were.
Yes.
All right. So look, this has got to happen. I'll send out a memo. We'll send you the link to this call. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I just, if I might, just in terms of the time frame for the closure, it's my understanding, Seeley, that they did shut on October 1st for the refueling. That was a scheduled shutdown. And there were 12 items of deferred maintenance that they identified as having to be completed during the shutdown. 12 of 50 items of deferred maintenance, because they originally thought in 2016, when they signed the agreement to shut these 2 reactors, they thought, oh, we're not going to spend money. We're going to defer the maintenance because we're shutting those reactors in 2024 and 2025. So now all of a sudden they realize that in order to get an extension of the license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, that they are going to have to address the deferred maintenance, and 12 of those items of deferred maintenance have to take place while the unit 1 is shut. So it's not so much that there's a set time frame, but rather that they have to complete those 12 items of deferred maintenance. And then they've already removed 1/3 of the fuel. And then they have to load that fuel at the end after they've done all of the maintenance. And it's only before the fuel is reloaded that they will be able to undertake to remove the coupon.
Correct.
And Celia, I think that you said that the ultrasound can be accomplished after the fuel is loaded? No. So those are the 2 things, the ultrasound testing and the removal of the coupon have to happen before they put in the new fuel.
That's right. And using the methods that the NRC has approved for testing the coupon, it takes 18 months to get back the results. And so part of the Mothers for Peace demand was that they not be allowed to start the reactor till we get the results back of the test, which makes sense, right? That is, they're probably not going to abide by that.
I'm
but
sure they're not going to.
We should raise a stink about it anyway.
But then the question is, what is the standard for embrittlement? And will they stand by? In other words, if the coupon comes back with a certain reading, what is the threshold reading that beyond which they allegedly can't operate? And are they just going to say, well, like they always do, we'll just change the regulation?
Probably.
And Celia, didn't you tell me that you contacted the PG&E, I believe, and asked them whether or not the coupon had been removed, and asked them whether they are in fact undertaking the ultrasound, and so far they haven't responded to your query, or no?
Nothing. And also one of our local state representatives has asked them too, and he has not gotten a response yet.
Unbelievable. All right, well, listen, we're near the end here. Wendy, did you want to say something? It's almost 4:30. Anybody else have something to say? Raise your hand. This has been, I got to go lie down. This has been a mind-boggling session, and we're going to have to keep at it now. You know,
I just want to say that the sequel to the San Onofre syndrome, we're already working on it, is the Diablo Canyon syndrome, keeping old rickety nukes going beyond their time.
I hope,
I hope that won't take another 12 years. So.
Right,
Yeah, really.
exactly,
I mean,
Milo.
It's got to happen soon, and it's got to be the military, especially when you put in all the information from what they're doing in Ohio. It's the only explanation that makes any sense, as far as I can tell.
Harvey,
one part business, one part war. That's the formula.
Right.
Thank you. Right before.
Oh wait, let Wendy speak. Then to Tom, and then Carl. Carl Grossman wants to speak as well. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. Very quickly, and yeah, if you look through the current defense budget that was just passed, there's tons of hidden money for nuclear space nukes. I mean, all kinds, and certain levels of depleted uranium that needs to be supplied from the DOE to the DOJ, which is crossing bounds that haven't happened for a really long time. I had an idea, and I also want to just thank Linda Seeley so much. I want to thank all of you guys, but Linda Seeley always comes on and just has such bright energy, and I know it's just like so dark with the world that you guys are fighting, and I just want to thank all of you and send so much love. My idea There was I'll see if I can find it before the end of the show. Otherwise, I'll try to pass it along. There was a statement put out by someone in the UN that was just talking about how the small reactors are just not the way to go for, like, there's nowhere to really secure the waste, all the reasons that we already know. So I'm just wondering, like, is anybody in contact with the UN and any of the departments in the UN, like any kind of like related thing, like whether it's human rights, because we have a certain right to not be exposed to these dangers and etc. But maybe get the international community to start working together on debunking the whole atoms for peace malarkey.
Right.
And thank you.
Well, ironically, and people need to remember this, the main reason, and given the context here, the main reason Germany was able to shut their reactors is they don't have a nuclear weapons program. Germany does not produce nuclear weapons, and France does. And you know, so you have the French guy, Macron, saying how the nuclear weapons and nuclear power industries are joined at the hip, and you have the Germany with no nuclear power or nuclear weapons. So, you know, duh, what else is going on? Carl Grossman, go ahead, please.
Just want to say quickly, in terms of reason, nuclear power and nuclear weapons, two sides of the same coin. But in my work over the decades, what I found is that vested interest and greed is critical. And not to I write extensively on TV and presented stuff on TV, how at the end of the Manhattan Project, the engineers and the scientists, well, what are we going to do next? The major contractors, Westinghouse and GE, how are we going to, so you can continue to build bombs, and they did 30,000, and then the super under Edward Teller. But what else could you do with nuclear technology to keep our jobs, to keep our contracts and so forth? So this string of national nuclear laboratories was set up. I mean, here in Long Island, we're very close to it because Brookhaven National Laboratory was set up on Long Island in 1947 to develop nuclear technology, civilian nuclear technology. And who was the longtime head of the utility on Long Island pushing nuclear? A guy named William Catacasinos, former assistant director at Brookhaven National Laboratory. So that gathering of people and corporations and government agencies. I mean, here, Manhattan Project became the Atomic Energy Commission in 1947. That juggernaut, then and now, is very much involved in pushing. Again, for vested interest, for greed. And I've spoken on nuclear. I've been to Russia 7 times talking on nuclear technology. And there, with all due respect to the left, you can't blame capitalism for the development. It was a letter in 1945 from a Russian physicist to Stalin, which really kicks off their nuclear program, which ends up weapons like ours and nuclear power. So it has to do, more than anything else, I feel, though the military connection is critical, vested interest.
Right. Thank you, Carl. Tatanka, you want to wrap? Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I don't know where to place this in the order of things. We've got to take care of this nuclear weapon, but we need to get ourselves educated on everything that's been going on in the last few decades up into space. And I know a couple of authors, Alana Freeland, who, I heard her speak twice. She follows all the military trade shows, right? Under an Ionized Sky is a classic. And she's got probably 3 or 4 books out after that, as far as I know. But she knows as much about what goes on in space as anything. And so if we can familiarize ourselves with what's actually happening that we don't know as it relates to energy, and specifically nuclear energy, it's going to just make it easier for us.
All right, so listen, excellent. So the next step is to have a major 2-hour Zoom. If we can get Nato Khan, that would be a big plus. There are mailing lists that we can get access to make it a big deal. And we'll have Linda, you need to talk to me about our Thursday meeting. We need to make this happen. We cannot let this reactor reopen.
You're right. Carl had one more thing to add. I don't know if he's...
Go ahead.
Just with nukes in space, I broke the story in the Nation magazine, how the next mission of the Challenger had aborted a plutonium fuel space probe. So if the accident would have occurred a few months after it happened. And then I got deeply into this issue. I wrote a book called The Wrong Stuff. I also wrote a book, Michio did the introduction, Weapons in Space. This is my last point, about how Star Wars was predicated, and this was not made clear at the time, on battle platforms with hypervelocity guns, particle beams, and laser weapons needing all kind of energy. And what was to be on the battle platforms, this is in Weapons in Space.
They were going to use windmills.
Were super plutonium system and actual reactors. So the move up to space, in fact, at Brookhaven Lab, they did this work in the 50s, in the late 40s. I mean, not just food irradiation, not just nuclear-powered cars and trains, but also nuclear-powered rockets and so forth. It's a huge, monstrous threat to life.
You and Tatanka should talk. Carl's a great expert on this. You guys should get your heads together on this one. Anybody? Thank you, Carl, for that. Anybody else want to jump in here before we go?
I just want to re-emphasize about Bruce Gagnon. We've been talking about networking and connecting. He's the head of a huge international network that's very committed and very involved.
Well, he should be in touch with Carl and Tatanka here. A great triumvirate.
Yeah, and the name is the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. And I helped form that in 1992. For many years, I was the convener. And Bruce is right there on the connection between weapons and nukes in space.
Exactly.
All right, well, and coming down, let's do on planet Earth here. We just got to get the apple shut. So I'll start to pull this together. People have people they want to include. Email me, solartopia@gmail.com. We still have 36 people on the call. Does anybody else want to chime in before we go?
No, I'm game. I'll get their numbers from you, and we'll get together.
Okay, Wendy, thank you be careful out there gathering signatures, for God's sakes. That was a mind-boggling report, and another 2.5 hours. Well, couldn't be better. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve and Mike, for keeping us going, and Wendy for your reportage. Melinda, I think you got to make spare room there for Donna and Torgan and get Jim and Mary Beth. Guys, are you going up to if you're going up to Bolinas, you need to stop in San Luis Obispo.
Oh, we're already planning on it. We're going to interview